Nuclear threats and blaming the West for starting the war in Ukraine. President Putin tells Russia and the world how he views the invasion a year on. Also this lunchtime, the former and serving Metropolitan Police officers facing accusations over sending racist, homophobic and misogynistic WhatsApp messages. Cheaper HRT, how thousands of women can soon get menopause treatment for less than £20 a year. And Flight of Fancy, the new children's book about a pigeon who flew to North America instead of the Northeast.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. It is they who have started the war. Putin's take on his invasion of Ukraine 12 months ago this week. He once again blamed the West and blamed Ukraine, saying his military operation was to eliminate the neo-Nazi regime in Kyiv. Then came the threats. He told Russia the country should stand ready to resume nuclear weapons tests if the US does so, and announced Moscow was suspending its participation in a nuclear arms control deal with America. So what could that mean and how will the West react? Here's our correspondent, John Ray.
12 disastrous months into a war of his choosing, yet publicly at least Vladimir Putin's voice goes without challenge in Moscow. So too his rewriting of history and geography. His aim, he claimed, was to defend Russian lands from a neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine. I want to repeat, he said, it's they who have started the war. We have used and are using force to stop it. His contempt for the West reached new heights of vitriol. It had lied and cheated and set out to destroy Russia. Local news channels had counted down an excitement to the speech, delayed from last year amid military defeats. Still, he had precious few victories to report. Instead, he asked his audience to stand in silence for the tens of thousands of Russian soldiers killed in his cause, men he called heroes. He said Russia would strengthen its armed forces, including its nuclear capability, and he suspended the New START nuclear limitation treaty with the United States. They want to inflict a strategic defeat on us, he said. It brought swift condemnation from NATO.
Over the last years, Russia has violated and walked away from key arms control agreements. With today's decision on New START, the whole arms control architecture has been dismantled.
President Biden is in Poland, meeting one of Ukraine's staunchest allies. He will have listened and taken note before he himself speaks later. After yesterday's visit to Kyiv, heavy with symbolism and the promise of unstinting support, he will describe this as a struggle between democracy and autocracy. In Moscow, Vladimir Putin promised his people that Russia would achieve its ends step by step. But as they sang the national anthem, no one was nearer knowing how or when Putin's war will end, only that escalation is more likely than resolution. John Ray, ITV News.
We can join our Europe editor, James Mates, who is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. We are expecting to hear from President Biden, who's in Poland later. How do you expect he will respond to what the world has heard this morning from Putin?
Well, this is a pre-arranged major set-piece speech. I don't expect him to respond directly to it. Americans won't be terribly surprised about pulling out of the START nuclear arms control agreement. Basically, they say that Russia has not really been in compliance with it for a long time, as it's not resumed proper inspection since they were suspended during the COVID outbreak. So in many ways, it's just an acceptance of the reality. The other bit of nuclear saber rattling, the threat to restart nuclear tests. If America does, well, there's no sign that America is planning any such thing. But as Jens Stoltenberg of NATO said there, what this means is the whole nuclear arms control architecture it doesn't exist anymore. And this must be the first time in a very long time, almost only since the 1960s, that there have been no nuclear arms control agreements between Russia or the Soviet Union as it was then and the United States, and none even being talked about. So that really does illustrate just how rock bottom relations have got. The rest of Putin's speech was a long recitation of grievances that he's been talking about for a year. Ukrainians started it. They're setting up biolabs on Ukrainian territory. The Americans are trying to give the Ukrainians nuclear weapons. This sort of stuff, we've heard it for a year now or longer, and there's never been a shred of evidence for it. Biden, I expect, will emphasise the positive, that the commitment to NATO. It's a big follow-on from yesterday, that America's commitment to NATO is absolutely rock solid, and as it is to Ukraine. And this is a message not just for Putin as well, but for the Chinese too, who are expected this week to produce their own peace plan. The big visit from China's top diplomat to Moscow is in the offing. But a message to China too, that if you think we're going to do some sort of peace deal that just freezes everything in place and goes with the status quo, that's not going to happen. So it's a message to Europe, to Putin, and to Beijing.
James Mates, thank you very much. Thank you. In the cruelest of developments, rescuers on the Turkey-Syria border are searching for survivors once again after a new powerful earthquake in the same region that was devastated a fortnight ago. The 6.4 magnitude quake hit last night, causing yet more fear and more panic. Once again, people are trapped in the rubble. This time, it is hoped the death toll will be lower because so many people had already fled the area. With the latest, here's Danny Sinha.
Panic as the earth shakes again in Hatay. Already reeling from the deadly quake 2 weeks ago, a new one with a magnitude of 6.4 hit the southern Turkish province on Monday night, finishing off the buildings already battered. Neighbouring Syria also felt it too. Earlier quakes have left thousands homeless, making an already dreadful situation worse. We came out running, says Khadija. We're on the ground floor. I don't even know how we managed to get out. There are 4 floors above our apartment. We're afraid of ending up under the rubble like other people. We got out running and we're staying on the street now. We only took a rug and blankets to keep the children warm. Hatay was one of the last places where rescue efforts were continuing, but the fear is more people could be missing after this latest quake. In Antakya, already fragile buildings collapsed, making it harder for families to search for the bodies of their loved ones. Felt as far away as Egypt and Lebanon, last night's tremor has only intensified trauma in Turkey and Syria. There are bittersweet moments too. Afra was born in the rubble in Syria 2 weeks ago. Her parents and 4 siblings are all dead. She's now been adopted by her aunt and uncle. Her uncle Khalil says, "She is now one of my children. She is my daughter. I will not differentiate between her and my children. In fact, she'll be dearer than my children because she'll keep the memory alive of her father, mother and siblings." They know more than ever just how precious life is. Danny Sinha, ITV News.
Back here now, and disciplinary proceedings have begun against 8 former or serving Metropolitan Police officers accused of sending offensive messages. It's alleged they sent racist, homophobic and misogynistic messages in a WhatsApp group. Our reporter Martha Fairley is at the hearing for us. What's it heard so far today?
Well, this disciplinary hearing concerns numerous posts made in a WhatsApp group that was set up by PC Kelsey Buchan in May 2016. It had 8 members, all of whom were serving members of the South East Safer Neighbourhoods team at the time. And the group operated for about 2 years. Now, presenting the disciplinary cases, Daniel Hobbs told the panel that it was a police team that lacked any effective leadership and supervision, which he claims led to the development of a toxic, abhorrent culture. The hearing was warned that the WhatsApp messages posted contained sexist, racist and discriminatory language and had profane and vulgar content. And that of the 8 officers, some of whom have since left the Met, they were in breach of a number of standards of professional behaviour, namely equality and diversity, authority, respect and courtesy, reporting and challenging improper conduct and discreditable conduct. And most of the posts that have been referred to in this morning's hearing are in fact so offensive they just can't be broadcast.
And Martha, some of the messages contain comments about Katie Price's son Harvey.
That's right. We've heard a number of posts made by former Police Sergeant Luke Thomas. In one, he referred to Harvey Price, the mixed-race disabled son of Katie Price, in which he made a discriminatory reference to his blindness and also made nasty and unpleasant comments about his weight. He also compared him to the mixed-race officer on the team. Other posts make offensive comments about women, black people and people with disabilities, as well as a female probationer officer about her sexual orientation and appearance. Only 2 of the officers accused of gross misconduct, PC Glyn Rees and an officer who's being referred to as Officer B, are still serving, and they are the only 2 who are attending today's hearing.
Martha Fairley, thank you. In the last hour, Downing Street has said the Prime Minister was not disappointed at being unable to present Cabinet with a new deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol today. Rishi Sunak's official spokesman said long-lasting challenges still need to be addressed and intensive negotiations with the EU continue over resolving the issues over the post-Brexit customs arrangements. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Carl Didden. Will this calm any talk of a rebellion and potential resignations?
Well, it's hard to know exactly where we stand in terms of rebellion for the simple reason that there is as yet no deal against which to rebel. But you're right, we certainly expected to see a deal as early as today. We thought that when the Prime Minister went to Northern Ireland to talk to the Northern Irish parties on Friday, it could happen today, but negotiations seem to slow over the weekend and they are still very much in the negotiating phase. In fact, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, and Northern Ireland Secretary, Chris Heaton-Harris, are going to have another video call with the EU negotiator at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and they're still trying to hammer out some of the key details of what is being proposed. The problem is this: what has been negotiated so far doesn't take Northern Ireland out of the single market. That means that effectively Northern Ireland still has to follow EU rules over which Northern Ireland's voters and politicians have no say. And the DUP say that so long as that is the situation, they are not prepared to go back into government in Stormont, which is one of the key aims that the Prime Minister has in all of this. Now, his backbenchers, the Prime Minister's Conservative backbenchers, some of whom have been meeting him over the last 24 hours, say that unless he can get the DUP to sign up to this, there's really no point in going ahead with it. The Prime Minister may agree with that assessment, we don't know. The difficulty for him is if he tries to press ahead, that's when he could face a rebellion on the backbenches, possibly ministers resigning if they don't think that he should be doing a deal that doesn't take Northern Ireland out of the single market. As yet, he hasn't managed to do it.
Carl Didden, thank you very much. Thank you. The media watchdog Ofcom is investigating ITV and Sky News after comments made by the family of Nicola Bulley. At a press conference yesterday, both broadcasters were criticised for making contact after the family asked for privacy. Ofcom has said they are extremely concerned and have written to the broadcasters asking for an explanation. The UK government recorded a monthly surplus in January. That's despite substantial spending on energy support schemes, record debt interest and one-off payments to the EU. Figures from the Office of National Statistics show less was spent in the public sector than was received in taxes and other income, resulting in a surplus of £5.4 billion. The figures have surprised economists, but the Chancellor said it won't change his economic plans. Next this lunchtime, finally, some good news about HRT. The Department of Health says from April the 1st, the menopause treatment is getting cheaper. Currently, around 15% of women in England and Wales between the ages of 45 and 64 are receiving HRT for treatment of the menopause. From April, they will be able to access a year's worth of care for just £18.70. The change could benefit as many as 400,000 women.
We feel it's an investment in women to support them with the cost of HRT, because we want to be, some women don't want to take HRT, some women get side effects from HRT. What we don't want to be a barrier to taking it is the cost of it, and that's why the government's prioritising women's health in this way.
I'm joined from our Manchester studio by Thorin Govind, who's the chair of the English Pharmacy Board. Thank you for talking to us. Could you talk us through the changes? How much does it cost to get HRT right now?
Well, it's currently £9.35 for a prescription item in England. That is not the same in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. It is really a tax on the sick, the prescription charge system here in England. And whilst it's pleasing to see that this measure has been put in place with regards to HRT, this season ticket for 1 year, this doesn't go far enough by the government, and they need to tackle health inequalities further.
And when you say that, what are you calling for exactly? Are you saying that HRT should be free for all women all of the time?
We say that all prescription charges should be scrapped in England. At the moment, this will help some women, but it won't go far enough for those women who have other prescription items as well, because they'll still potentially need to pay for those other items. So it won't be a help. It's really a hindrance, the prescription charge, to helping people stay well. The government want people to be in work, working, paying our taxes, and to do that, they need to support the public and patients to be able to pay for prescriptions. Now, as an expert for Menopause Mandate, which is a campaign group which has support of celebrities and MPs, this is something we've been considering for months. And also with regards to my role as chair of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society's board in England, we had a survey of prescription charges, and we are concerned that patients are not accessing treatment because they can't afford it.
In the changes that are coming in April, you have to, as a woman, join a scheme in order to get this kind of season ticket that you describe. How complicated will it be to join that scheme?
Well, women will be able to, as they already do if you have a prescription prepayment certificate in England, you can go online, or there is a phone number to be able to do that. Some pharmacies will be able to support in branch as well, but I think it's important that this is another pressure on our pharmacy teams when we're having to deal with prescription charges, and we don't want to do that. We want people to be able to stay well, and we don't want to spend our times on bureaucracy. We want to focus on our clinical care and looking after the patients who are coming through our doors.
And HRT only works for the women it works for if you can get hold of it. Briefly, what's the latest on the shortages that we've seen over the last few months?
There are still shortages of HRT, and our pharmacy teams are spending far too much time sorting out the supply of HRT when, again, they would rather be spending that time with patients. There has been a serious shortage protocol renewal. So this is a scheme by the government which allows us as pharmacists to provide alternative items where appropriate. But this again comes back to the role of pharmacists, and we are calling for pharmacists to be able to alter prescriptions. So the current situation is if you are prescribed tablets, then we cannot give you capsules, for example, in simple terms. So the government needs to empower pharmacists.
So the campaigning continues despite the changes announced today. Thorin Govind, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Finally, travelling 4,000 miles as the crow flies is a long way in anyone's book. But if you're a pigeon, it's worth the book in itself. Bob the Pigeon made headlines last year when he ended up in Alabama rather than Gateshead. Now his adventures are illustrated in a new children's book, as Sally Biddulph reports.
Bob is not your average pigeon. His racing exploits are the stuff of legend. He's crossed the Atlantic on an avian odyssey and made it home to the northeast. The logical next step, being immortalised in a children's book bearing his name.
The idea came from the media. It was when we're doing like interviews, a lot of the media was saying there's got to be a book in this and there's got to be a short film in this. Was it a dream? You know, you just think, did it really happen? And many times you think, was I just thinking that happened or did it really happen?
Bob started his epic adventure last year. Taking off from Guernsey, he was due in Gateshead 10 hours later, but he took quite the detour, travelling 4,000 miles to Alabama, where weeks later he was handed into an animal shelter. The tags on his legs meant his owner could be traced, and a transatlantic reunion with Alan followed, along with a bespoke travelling bird box and a more direct flight home. It's still a mystery how he got to the States, but odds on he hitched a ride on a cargo ship. The perfect storyline for a children's adventure. Enter stage left the aptly named author and illustrator Tony Race, a longtime friend of Bob's owners.
Well, the story captured my heart and I had to make it different to anything I'd read before and something that would capture children's imaginations, and by rhyming it and making it, I think, bouncy, by bouncing the story along. The pictures had to be live, bright, captivating to a child maybe who can't read yet.
Alan sketched a number of different Bobs before he landed the perfect fit, and now many more literary antics are being penned. As for Bob, his racing days are over, but he'll live out his dotage being used for breeding. The adventure continues. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
That's it for now. Mary will be here with the evening news at 6:30. From everyone here right now, bye-bye.